Sir, at the outset, I wish to welcome you for getting associated with CENJOWS and the series of lectures that we conduct every Thursday. I'll request now to introduce the speaker for the audience who are connected to us through the VC channel. Yeah, please start.
Thank you, sir. Major General Dr. Bipin Bakshi, AVSM, BSM retired, is a multifaceted scholar, warrior, and sportsman. Awarded by the Sword of Honor and gold medal at IMA, Dehradun, he also won the gold medal in BTech. He has an illustrious background of military service, UN peacekeeping, and a tenure in NSG. He pioneered the first ever Brahmaputra sailing expedition mentioned in the Linka Book of Records 2020 and completed his PhD on information warfare in 2020. He is presently a distinguished fellow with CLAWS, a military think tank. He has delivered TEDx talks and speaks on national security, information warfare, motivation, and leadership. He is an author of 2 graphic novels on war heroes and has several publications to his credit. We welcome you to CENJOWS, sir.
Thank you so much. Sir, you can start now, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here with you. I've been associated with CENJOWS off and on, but I have not yet delivered a lecture. I think it was nice of you all to invite me. So can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. Visible, sir.
Okay. So as was mentioning, this is about information warfare. And as the DDG mentioned, I was the brigadier in charge of information warfare for entire J&K sector in the years 13 and 14. We were handling the China issues, Demchok intrusions, Tumor, as well as the issues with Pakistan on the LC, the beheading, Hemraj case. So that's the time when I was BJSIW, also there for the floods of 2014. It was a huge issue, and there was a lot of IW which went into that. So that actually set me on the path later to do my PhD in the subject. And obviously, I have had my views, my impressions, and I've done some studies on it. So I'll try and give you an idea as to what are my views on the impact of IW on national security and how, when I say state response, I'm talking about various countries' response, including India. So this is our RM's visit, what you're seeing to NDC, where it's about a year back. So I think what he spoke was, quite predictive of the future. He already said that the next warfare will be multi-domain. And if you recollect, during Op Sindoor, almost all the military officers were talking in terms of multi-domain operations. And he has said that information warfare, cyber, space are as critical as conventional operations. So that is, it sets the context to my talk in a way. And the only issue is that we try to segregate cyber and cognitive, which I feel is an error, because if we are looking at them separately, then what is happening is that the narratives, the divisive issues, the cognitive attacks, they are passing through cybersecurity measures, but they are still an attack. And we are not able to stop it because we have not understood the real game which is happening in this space. So that is what I would be, mentioning a little bit about. And as you're aware, in Op Sindoor, we saw things, but there was a lot happening in the cyberspace which did not come to the public eye. So here is one cyber attack of Pakistan. Though if you see the number of views are not many, so I would say we also won in cyberspace, but it was a battle which was going on side by side. And here is one more. Now, while they have come by the handle Qazi Zain or Zain Qazi, but when I go through their content, everywhere they talk about Pakistan Air Force. So I am quite convinced that this is a Pakistan Air Force issue of the cyber, and they are hiding behind a innocuous handle. So something similar could be happening from our side too. There was a lot happening, and even our agencies were at it. So if you see this echo of Gulmarg, we had what do you call derailed. When you say derailed, actually we had hacked their passenger reservation system. During Op Sindoor, they were not able to do any booking or any movement. So this was one success from our side. When you look at echo of Gulmarg, again, this is the handle, and this was Indian Cyber Force. So all across the globe, you will find these kind of innocuous handles, but nobody knows whether they are state-sponsored, state-driven, or just a camouflage version of the state. So I'll not say more than that. But a lot happened in Sindoor. Their ticketing system was disrupted. Their welfare trust was disrupted. Their defense housing agency was impacted. The Supreme Court was impacted. A lot of things happened in the cyberspace also. Now, what about the information warfare space? That is these cognitive issues. So I'm just quoting from one part of a PIB, MIB press release on 14th May. So this is 4 days after the operation was over. And in this open source statement, as you go a little down, this is the text. It says that alongside the military operations, fierce information warfare was happening. It was distorting the truth. However, now what I have put in italics, India has been proactively responding and dissipating misinformation with facts, transparency. We have been proactively responding. It is an open statement. We were not proactive. We were proactive only in the response. So what does this say? It was Pakistan which was proactive, and we were forced to be responsive. That is what I'm, inferring from this whole thing. Now, the whole issue of terminology, many of you would have heard many kinds of terms. So as a part of my lecture, which I take in many places, I try and unravel these multiple terms. It all started in World War II, or rather, I'll not say started. We are looking at terms which emerged from World War II, and they of course have a even further background. But in World War II time, it was only psychological warfare and deception. Since there were no computers, so there was no IW per se. There were two things which were happening. But almost as soon as computers became popular, 1998 itself, the term information warfare came out. Very soon thereafter, the information warfare started getting separated from the psychological ops, which they started terming it as perception management. You would have heard of the term perception management. Now, a lot of our terminology, we are borrowing from America. So that issue still continues. So in America, they started saying somewhere around the turn of the century, or the first decade of the century, that let's not call it info warfare. Let's call it information operations, because it's not warfare. It's a battle of perceptions. And they started segregating cyber warfare. They themselves have realized that this segregation was not correct, right? And later on, you would have heard today the term strategic communications. Strategic communication is like an overarching term. It is supposed to include everything. And very soon thereafter, the Army Directorate called ADG-PI earlier. Incidentally, it was earlier raised as Army License Cell. I think General Sumanwar was one of the first to occupy that chair as the Major General. Then it became ADG-PI, Public Information. But the whole thing is, it is not just public information. So now, as the words or Stratcom has become more popular, so our ADG-PI, 2 years back, I think 3-4 years back, maybe more than that, has been changed to ADG Stratcom. But ultimately, all this put together is basically information warfare. And as I will explain, our doctrines and in the Indian Army, it is very clear what is IW and what are the components. So I will go on to try and explain that. So we will use the term strategic communication, cognitive warfare, narrative battle, all interchangeably, basically, but the underlying theme is only IW. Well, it is being touted as a fifth domain of warfare. The first four being land, air, sea, and space. Now, this fifth domain is actually an artificial domain. As I always say, technically, if you shut down all the computers, mobiles, and there is no electricity left in the world, this domain will collapse. So it's actually a man-made domain. It is transnational by design because the very nature of connectivity which this digital space has gone into is transnational. There are no nationalities in this, and therefore there are no borders. You can be sitting anywhere and taking action anywhere. That is the issue. Another peculiarity of this domain is that there are, as of now, no laws for it. When the World War ended, the laws of armed conflict, which are came out when the UN was made, are all based on armed conflict. So the whole issue of legal provisions, what we can talk about, is only talking about armed conflict. So IW attack does not trigger any of these provisions. The hostile effort without using armed force is not covered. So you can keep on doing this, which people are doing, and you are not violating actually any international norm. That is the whole issue. This can't carry on. I mean, it is imperative to fight this battle in a better manner. Which is what I say that the structures which we have here, earlier made in the World War time, are not really adequate to fight this battle. Now, here is a quote by the PM, which he spoke pertaining to UN, but I am just trying to, correlate this when he said that we cannot fight today's challenges with outdated structures. He's talking about the UN Security Council. Similarly, I would say that we as a nation cannot fight the IW challenge with the outdated structures which we have. As I was saying some time back, info warfare is not actually new. It's not just World War or it is now. It has been practiced in some form or the other earlier. How do you look at the Chanakya's Arthashastra? How do you create a dissension in an enemy camp? Is it not information warfare? How do you carry out espionage without some form of information warfare? And finally, the issue of Chanakya's Arthashastra, open war is the last subject. Prior to that is something else. And is it not information warfare? When you look at his Rajamandala, Circle of States, in the center is Vijaygusu, who is the king who Chanakya is advising. He says, if your enemy is your neighbor's neighbor should be your ally. How are you going to do all this? Is it not some form of IW itself? And when you look at his Char Upais, Samadana Bhed Danda, the last Upai is only Danda. Before that is all some or the other form of IW, psychological pressure. Chinese, we talk about Sun Tzu. All this, what is on the slide, I think is IW. But most importantly, the last quote, which is very often used by us, by all military thinkers. How will you win the battle without fighting? Is it not IW? So that is the backdrop in which I normally start. And at this point, I would also say, what has changed from all this background, Sun Tzu, Arthashastra, what has really changed? It is our manner of communication which has changed. So there was a time when we used to write one-to-one letters when we were young, even when I was in service. And a telephone call was a one-to-one phone call. You don't talk to 10 people on one instrument. Then came the internet. We started sending emails to multiple people, started having groups. And now finally, of course, you have the mobile where everything has changed. On the bottom panel, what I'm showing is public information. It was state-controlled public information, smoke signals and drum beats. It was the state which is passing information. Became privatized, yes, with the printing press, but there was a strong amount of editorial oversight. And I would say a certain amount of government control was possible on print media. Then came audio and FM, then came video, and now there are multiple channels, and everything is now converging on your mobile device. The problem is that the kind of information which is being blasted in this manner is escaping privacy, it is escaping editorial oversight, it is escaping government oversight. It is unverified, bulk transmission. and you just don't know which we are, where you're going. So you yourself are the target, and when you pass on some information which is unverified at times to your friends, you are also part of the weapon. You're part of the cycle. So this is getting more and more difficult with AI and more credible tools. It's an overriding reality happening. So of course, you would have heard all of this in some form or the other. I'm just putting it in perspective. Now, when you talk about the state response, you take a look at this photograph. This is of the US Cyber Command, which I have taken, not myself. I've taken it from their Twitter page about 6 years back. So 6 years back, this is what the Cyber Command was doing. When you look into this photograph, you will find a number of people in civil dress as well as army dress who are moving around computer terminals. But just see the wall. They are also looking at content. So they have realized that cyber cannot be the only way to handle IW. You have to look at the content part, because as I said earlier, the narrative which is being fed, it is passing through cybersecurity. It is not a worm or a bot, which also is used in IW, but certain part of the narrative is open. It is not a virus. It is targeted at your brain. So they are actually hacking your mind and not your tech. And if US Cyber Command is looking at the content all the time, so they are aware of it. And they're going to take, they are obviously not wasting the time just looking at it. They will take some steps to make sure that negative content, narrative warfare issues are handled in whatever manner they can. Different countries have different state responses. I will talk about it as I go along. So this was the backdrop. I will speak about the components. I will try and explain that it is a challenge to national security, various countries' approaches, and finally the way forward. So the terms, I've already touched upon some of these terms. Psychological warfare and deception is what it started from. Then started coming perception management, all these issues. As incidentally, in between, and even today, US does not use the term psychological ops. It uses the term military intelligence support operations. Basically, PsyOps only. The issue of cyberspace, infospace, STRATCOM, cognitive, all things I'm saying, basically the umbrella term is IW. And now this is a US chart. About 15 years back, they spoke of information operations. At that time, they were speaking of 5 components. Now, military deception and operational security, we are not clubbing it with IW. When I say MISO, military intelligence support operations, basically it is psychological operations, cyber and EW. So these are basically the 3 components, and they need to be taken together. They have themselves realized that what they have done this, if you see down the vertical, they have segregated infotech and cognitive. This later on they realized is not a correct division. However, they have been able to club it to some manner. Many countries have done it, but in India, I feel we are still segregated. The technical part is absolutely away from the cognitive part. This is a mistake. So, well, at this point of time, the definition of IW is on the screen. It is EW, cyber, and PsyOps. This is as per our doctrines, and very few number of doctrines have been issued. One by RTRAC for Army, and one by headquarter IDS for all 3 services. And in both of them, primarily, what I'm saying on the slide is correct. This is what it is, and it's not changed. So here it is. PsyOps or Psy warfare is supposed to include perception management, PI, and public diplomacy. Now, public information is when you're using the open media only, and you're using it to convey facts. That is PI. The minute you are giving it a spin, and you are at times using, some other means like loudspeakers and leaflets, then you are into perception management. Okay. Cyber, defense, exploit, and attack. All 3. Again, we are mostly looking only at defend. The time has come where we have to graduate to exploit and attack. Things are happening. As you all may be aware, in the Indian military, things are happening. Defense Cyber Agency has come up. Certain other things are happening at the command level, and maybe even now at the core level. And EW. You cannot segregate EW from all this. As you would see now in the anti-drone measures which were taken, EW was an important component, and it has an impact on both the others. Whereas we still try to keep all these three separate, which I feel is a mistake. The latest place where I could find reference to these components is in the 2018 Land Warfare Doctrine, wherein again it has been clearly mentioned as to what is IW. So the definitions are clear. These are the three components. And you find any other element, whichever way you may feel, it is actually fitting into these three. Okay. Now, I will again repeat that you cannot treat cyber as a separate function, because the narrative will pass through the cyber wall and the firewall, but yet it will have the same effect as what it was designed for, because it is keeping in mind that it can navigate through your cyber walls. You cannot have PI and PR as a separate function. And the cyber issues, there are many gaps in the thing, which is partly cognitive in nature, because ultimately it's a human. The human in the chain, they are not able to discover that they have been hacked at times. And this is just a normal statistic that 44% of the organizations are not able to understand that they're already hacked. And in fact, there was another study which felt in the corporate world, up to 6 months is the average time when an organization discovers and reports that it has been hacked. So much of hacking is already going on. Sorry, 4 months, as I mentioned. Now, does it challenge national security, or are all these things independent? I would say they all have an impact on national security. As you're aware, the concept of national security itself has undergone change in the last, I would say, 30, 40 years, particularly since the computers came into being. What was earlier basically interstate military conflict. When you talk of security, you talk of borders. That was long back. Now today things have changed. I will not say today, as far as 20 to 30 years back, people have realized that there are much more dimensions of security besides military security, political security, info. And what is on yellow, info security, unfortunately has not yet come into our lexicon that this is also a part of our national security. So if you study security by itself, it is the one of the prime thinkers, Barry Boozan, he's been speaking about it. It is the capability of states and societies to maintain their independent identity and their functional integrity. So if this is what is security, and when you look at the Russian national security strategy, December 15, they already listed so long back that info security is part of national security. I think I'm running a little slow. I'll go fast now. So I have written a paper on this, in fact, for clause on this issue. And this is the board of NDC college when I was doing NDC. At that time, it was not recognized as an element. And even subsequently, around 4 or 5 years back when I checked, we still have not defined information security or information warfare, psychological security, whatever manner you call it, as a part of national security. We need to do so, because if we have to protect our state, information security is equally critical as any other dimension. So the conceptual constructs have changed. Our architecture, therefore, does not keep pace. And we are still looking at all these elements in separate verticals. There are different experts who are dealing with it. There are different articles written on it. And we need to harmonize all this is my issue. Issue of cyber jostling, I'll try and come to it a little later, and we don't have an authoritative publication. Of course, we don't have a national security strategy either, but we need to have an IW strategy too. So coming to state approaches, I've already spoken about the US approach. They have gone in a very, very big way. And in the battle in Ukraine, if you think that Russia had not made a lot of cyber attacks, you're wrong. They had made a lot of attacks, but the US Cyber Command teams were physically there. Besides that, there was Microsoft Cloud and there was Starlink, which helped Ukraine. Otherwise, Russia would have broken Ukraine much faster. So they have these hunt forward missions. They have people going out, because at times you need to be physically into a network to be able to work on it. They've done a lot of work in this field, but somewhere around 2017 or 18, the cyber attacks and cyber strategy and the way they would go about it became more overt. So till 16, 17, it was all hidden. And even in India today, it is also hidden because nobody knows what is happening. But in the foreign countries, they are very clear about it. It is open that we will hit the malicious cyber activity at a source, even if we have to cross borders to hit. So they have been very clear on it. And they have a separate branch handling these kind of issues. I just done a study on this some time back. So at a battalion level, at a core level, they have a PSYOPs battalion, 230 people. At a div level, they have 60 to 70 people, and even going down, depending on where they need, this kind of debts are available. And who are these people? They are psychological operations soldiers. They are different from the normal men. What you're seeing here is a very old photograph of Iraq. In the center is the PSYOP soldier, what we do of Sadbhavna and various things, we do it ourselves. So here there is a guy who is targeting, okay, in this district, in this town, you need to distribute school bags, and here they are. And look at their cap badge. I will explain. This is all from open source. This is what it says, that silver, gray, and white represent the different forms of warfare which they have. So you can see it later. I'm running out of time. Okay, Singapore has raised a fourth service, Army, Navy, Air Force, and Digital and Intelligence Service. This is about 2 years, more than 2 years back. And they have a cyber range, and they are looking at this in a very, very serious manner. I don't need to tell you about Russia. They have a tremendous capability. And as I said, if you look at the Crimea campaign, they had a great success. Well, Ukraine, they did not succeed to that extent, but there was a hell of a lot of attacks. And it was only because US Cyber Command was there, and Microsoft Cloud was made available, and Starlink was made available. That is how Ukraine survived. China, we are aware of the 3 warfare strategy. If you look at these 3, largely it is IW. This is an intelligence report, just one building with about 2,000 people who are doing this kind of job. And they've gone for the militia concept. They have a lot of militia which they are using, where they hire young, cyber commando kind of people, and they are able to do a lot. If you look at the way they attacked in Germany, and at the bottom, what the German authorities claim, that the Chinese cyber espionage has seen a significant qualitative and quantitative development previously unseen. This is 24. This news item is of 24. So, well, this kind of, massive developments happening in the space. So you think China is not hacking everybody else if they are doing Germany and of course USA. In fact, there was a news item that they have hacked into the telecom services of Washington, and they have been listening to the senior people's internal communication for quite some time. And this is the first time since 1989, after Tiananmen Square, when the Chinese ambassador was summoned by Germany on this issue of cyber attacks. Even snail mail. So I'll not go into how snail mail can be used, a false QR sent by dark, you see it and you try and get into it and you're hacked. So the issue is that all cybersecurity cannot protect your mind. They are hacking your mind. Most critical are the people. And this digital technology is getting in everywhere. And there are issues of jurisdiction, there is fake news. Platforms don't respond. When you make a protest, the platforms don't want to respond. Why? They are benefiting from all the trouble which happens from fake news, the kind of turmoil which happens in the space. It only increases traffic. It increases their visibility. So why they take it down? I've had 2-3 times my Facebook profile has been replicated. It took me a week, 10 days to get it down. My Twitter handle was replicated, and somebody started using my photograph and my identity, started criticizing the Modi government. It was hell of a task. I had to take it down. But in all cases, like I'm saying, the platform was not very happy to take it down. I can show you the conversations, which are in fact, even the mail which I had. So the issue is there's a lack of a central agency. While we have many agencies, I will talk about it later, but an overarching central authority is needed to sort this out. There are also skill gaps in the law enforcement agencies, in the industry, in the governance. Everywhere there are skill gaps. Really there are some people who are supposed to be experts, but by and large, people don't know what to do when you're hit by a cyber attack or an IW attack. I will not talk about this produce versus protect. When I say Indians, we are very good in producing. We're not good in protecting ourselves. That's a topic of another debate, actually. So now, what are our structures? Now, this is a good overview given by Bharat Shakti of our apex level structures. So you have the NSA, you have the CCS on the top, and the NSC. The NSC has something called the National Security Council Secretariat. And in the Secretariat, there are various major components which I'll come to. Also under the NSA is the National Security Advisory Board. In fact, I have given a presentation to this board around 2 months back asking for a central agency. There's NIB and there is the tactical. And there is the SPG. Okay, now coming back to the NSCS. So earlier we had an additional NSA. Mr. Rajendra Khanna is now retired. I don't think anyone has taken that slot now. But there are 3 deputy NSAs here. And there is the National Cybersecurity Coordinator. There is the military advisor. Sandeep Singh also, I think, is retired. And I think the previous Vice Chief Subramani has taken over. And Admiral Ashok Kumar, the National Maritime Security Coordinator, has also retired. I don't know anyone taken. Well, so the point is that we have, these are the major arms in the NSCS. You tell me who is looking after information warfare. So I had recommended to them that they should raise a new deputy NSA. Now, what are the structures which we have presently? So the response in any case is supposed to be from CERT-in, and the protection is supposed to be by NCIIPC. Now, these two are not actually interconnected. So you're looking at, different agencies. Then when the NCIIPC came up, all uniformed forces and various other agencies were out of the ambit of NCIIPC. Even I have come to know recently that the atomic energy issues are outside the purview of NCIIPC. So we have basically too many agencies. The last to come up is MHA Cyber and Information Security Division. Subsequently, we have raised something called a Cyber Coordination Center, which sits within CERT-in actually. It is supposed to be the coordinator between all agencies, but it is a dotted line relationship. And finally, the center, like I said, we have the National Cyber Security Coordinator. He's supposed to coordinate all this, but the NCIIPC through NTRO directly reports to NSA and not through the Cyber Security Coordinator. But yes, he's supposed to coordinate all this. Now we have Defense Cyber Agency and CERA. I'm not going to more details here. There was a STRATCOM department which came up in the NSCS, but it did not go on for long, and presently there is no STRATCOM department. We are talking about a new one. So while we're looking at all this, what about OTT? Where does OTT go? So I often ask this question physically in an audience, and people have all kinds of ideas as to who will be doing it. But actually now we have a new ministry in the game. So MIB is going to monitor OTT content. Now they will look after all digital news, current affairs, and online movies which are being streamed on the OTT platforms. Now, while we have spoken of all this, there is more. What about electronic media? It is under NBDSA. What about print media? It is with PCI. These are all private bodies. Dark packages, snail mail, yes, Post Department. This is government. What about films? Normal films with the censor board. What about social media? There is no agency handling it. They are supposed to be self-regulated. So this is what I call the cyber soup of IW. And as I said, National Cyber Coordination Center is supposed to do all this. We are looking at new ways. A lot is happening. Now I'll talk a little bit about OpSindoor. There was an interesting article published by Washington Post wherein even our previous Foreign Secretary Nirupama Rao gave a statement. I'll just come to that. But you just look at Washington Post itself. The article is about Indian newsrooms. And a lot of misinformation happened, as you're aware. Karachi has been attacked, which had not happened. Munir has been arrested, it did not happen. But in the article, right on top, the photograph is all Pakistan. So the issue is that the narrative battle, how it was fought or not fought, I will come to a little bit more on that. But this is what this article contains. Nirupama Rao, madam, said that there were very few Indian officials who were put forward with a big gap. Only once a day you're coming, and there's a lot happening. So in between those, media briefing, which was held once in 24 hours, if something is happening, she's calling it a vacuum, and I would agree with her. It was a vacuum, and it was filled by hyper-nationalist people, the anchors, it was abnormal triumphalism, jingoism, I would say. And they were creating a parallel reality. They were talking about things which had not actually happened. Karachi has been attacked, Lahore has been destroyed. The Pak Army chief has been arrested. There's a coup in Pakistan. All this was happening on Indian media, not happening anywhere else. Okay. So, however, there was a new media war room set up. So, it is in public domain in the sense there are some articles where I have seen this. So, under MIB, under Mr. Vaishnav, the minister, a media war room was set up. It was set up in a hurry. and 3 military officers were also deputed to this media war room. I came to know of this when I was discussing certain issues in headquarters, IDS. Now that media war room should be institutionalized in a manner and it should run all through. You don't have to wait for Ops Sindoor. I mean, there's a battle happening all the time. And the issue of how our media portrays things, we need to have a more mature and a more credible way we handle these issues. We handle IW, I would say, all in all. Now, yes, there is MHA, they are doing a lot of work, but if you look at I4C, primarily it is focusing on cybercrime. Now, there was an issue, like I said, MHA is the latest entrant into the cyber game, and they are developing, they are doing things. In fact, they are outsourcing some cyber expertise, but they do probably feel that they need more expertise. So they have asked for CERTIN to be under MHA. This is the kind of media which was there, tug of war. And if that were to happen and CERTIN was to go under MHA, I don't know how this would look. Well, as of now, it is not happening. So MHA is doing its own work. Now, I was happy to be taking a lecture in CRPF Academy, Mount Abu. And this is on the 30th of August last year, I think it was. Yeah. And in this same morning, I saw this news article. So I put it into the presentation and I showed it to the officers. They were from all kinds of uniformed forces, including, national and state police services. The minute I put this out, one of the students themselves commented, what kind of a photograph is this? Ye to khulna jodna ho raha hai. I said, yes. So this is the whole thing, this is part of my whole understanding that you're talking about cyber commandos, but you're showing physical commandos. So your whole idea of information warfare needs to change. However, it's a good initiative. They have gone on, they have trained people, and the first batch is already passed out. They are trying to, upskill themselves. As I mentioned, there is a skill gap. After all, the entire police force was raised for physical crime. And now it is all on cyber. And we are talking about a cyber command. You're aware that we were supposed to have a cyber command raised about 6-7 years back. At that time, the first Defense Cyber Agency head, Admiral Mohit Gupta, was appointed, and we don't have a cyber command. But from April 25, we do have a cyber command. Here it is. It's been raised in the state. New cyber command headed by a DGP. Came up in April 25. And while it is only at the state level, I think it's a very, very interesting development. Bringing together various aspects, cybercrime, misinformation, disinformation, and multi-agency coordination under one unit. So I would say we need something like this. It is a paradigm shift in the state. And I think we need the same paradigm shift at the national level. So this is, as I said, April 25. So how do we proceed forward? We need to tackle this in a very, very methodical manner. It's an important domain of warfare. Let us treat it as such, exploit it, and we cannot have an ostrich approach that ye band kar do, wo band kar do, switch off things. It's not going to help. In fact, Australia is trying to pass a law that teenagers should not be on social media at all. So while that may work in for them or for a certain smaller population countries, it may not work for us. We have to see the best thing. And as I said, integrate. We are still disintegrated in our manner. It's an article I had written some time back. So it is a collaborative effort. You need to have all people on board. And when I was in NSG, I had called Mr. Vijiju for some function. The topic was something else, but the statement which he made, I think, was very, very significant. Every peace-loving person must contribute towards national security. Otherwise, you are actually contributing towards a security threat. And do we need a war room like this? Do we have a war room like this? We need to have some method to monitor, feed, to coordinate issues. And the DPTP Act has been enacted. The rules are yet to be enforced. They are coming up. They have come up for comment. And when they came up for comments, I wrote an article in the Clause Journal about digital personal data. This all has an impact on IW. So this was in the last to last issue of the Scholar Warrior. Now my conclusions. We need to synergize all the organizations which are working separately. Cyber, cognitive, physical dimensions. You need to have a nominated lead agency, distinct HRs. When we talk about a strategic communication authority, this is what I'm writing. In fact, it is in the last chapter of my forthcoming book on Ops Sindoor. I'm recommending a central strategic communication authority. Sometime back, on 2 public occasions, the CDS has already announced that he is making a new vertical. One was somewhere around 7 July in the ORF event. He mentioned, I'm raising a new vertical. Second was in Manikshwar Center in the Trident lecture. In fact, you people would be involved with it. The Trident lecture, he made a mention, and the CISC gave the name to it in the same lecture later. It is the Strategic Communication Agency, SCA, within IDS. At the national level, I am recommending a Strategic Communication Authority. You need to have a 24/7 POC. You need to have dedicated helplines. You need to have training, integration of all issues which are there, security, media, security agencies, government, technical companies, all should be on board. Training in HR companies has to be realigned. We don't have a vertical which is growing in this field. Some things are now happening. In fact, I am told that the AEC being repurposed in this direction to some extent. There are views on whether you can actually convert a person who is already qualified somewhere else into a new line. You will have to, design an absolutely new vertical, I would say, and a new HR vertical. You need to have a national policy, which include national security strategy, national cybersecurity policy, and national information warfare, or you can say national strategic communication policy, which is what I mentioned here. Do simulations, have comprehensive insights, and if you don't fight this battle in the manner it is meant to be fought, you will not be able to win the next war. You will not be able to win the peace. You will not be able to win the conflict. So with that, I will come to the end of my lecture. I can be reached at bipinbakshi@gmail.com. My number is also on the slide. And at this stage, I think I will stop sharing and we can open up for the further process.